welcome back to my channel. This video is my review for the 5th episode of DC's Stargirl, titled Hourman and Dr.MidNite. This episode gave us our proper introduction to the new Hourman, Rick Tyler, and took us closer to Beth Chapel taking on the mantle of Dr.MidNite. It was also strangely a Halloween episode, and it gave us a few more introductions to other DC characters. The plot of the episode was that Courtney and Yolanda continued their search for the new members of the JSA. Beth Chapel discovered their identities last episode and was now trying to join the JSA, which led them to Rick Harris, the son of the original Hourman, Rex Tyler. Meanwhile, Pat continued his search for the other members of the ISA in Blue Valley. Once again, we started with a flashback scene, this time to Rick's past. His parents were afraid they were in danger, so they left Rick with his uncle, which I thought was weird since he obviously didn't want to be in charge of Rick, and he wasn't told beforehand. This led to a moment that was referenced back in episode 2, when Pat told Courtney that Hourman survived the attack on the JSA from the opening scene of the show, and went on to live in Blue Valley until he died in a car crash, which sounded disappointing for a superhero. However, now we see that it wasn't just a car crash. They were killed by Solomon Grundy. It was cool seeing Grundy again, although he looked a bit weird. Still, it was a sad scene. What I'm loving about the flashback scenes is that they really get me invested in the character right away. In the present, Rick still lives with his uncle, who still seems to be mad about being left with Rick and takes it out on him. For example, in this scene, he sold a car part that Rick needed. Based on his behavior, I wonder if he's abusive towards Rick. I like how him and Yolanda both have different types of toxic families. I guess Beth's family could also be seen that way, but based on what we know, they're not as bad. Rick is also the first character on the show to have the typical superhero tragic backstory where his parents died. We're still not sure who Courtney's dad is, so that doesn't count. Now, based on this scene alone, I didn't really like both Rick and his uncle. We were obviously not supposed to like the uncle, but I felt like Rick was way too much of your typical angsty teen from other CW or Netflix shows. He kind of reminded me of Jughead from Riverdale, although ironically he really looks like KJ Apa. Next, the story switched back to Courtney, who was woken up by Mike wearing what I'm guessing was a Frankenstein mask. I was confused at first because I thought it was Solomon Grundy. Courtney slept in after spending last night at the hospital with Yolanda, and Barbara walked in to wake her up but started picking up her clothes and almost found the bag with the JSA gear. So Courtney threw all the gear in the bag and decided to take it with her to school, but she left the goggles behind. When she was leaving, Pat talked to her, and I thought he was catching on to the fact that she had the JSA gear, but he was just joking. He told her his suspicions that the other ISA members are in the town. So Courtney brought up that the principal must be the fiddler, but Pat said that the fiddler was an Irish man, and told Courtney to stop investigating. At school, Courtney and Yolanda were trying to stuff a bag in the locker. Honestly, with that bag, she looks like a school shooter. She says it's a gym bag, but it's way too large and bulky. She just looks way too suspicious. It was also kind of dumb for them to hide the bag at school. Yeah, Barbara could have found it at home, but here any other student could take it and there could be a locker search. Anyway, I love having scenes with them together and I loved their friendship. They were discussing who else they should recruit, but they were talking way too loud and Beth was eavesdropping. We never got confirmation that Beth knew that Courtney was Stargirl. She only heard Yolanda's name last episode, but she's really smart. Maybe she figured it out, or maybe she realized in this scene. One of the people they thought of recruiting was Artemis Croc. She finally had her first line, and I think her outfit was a reference to her Young Justice one. They said she was the most athletic person at school, but they didn't recruit her because she's too competitive. Then Beth was stopped by the janitor, who is obviously going to be a hero or villain. He mentioned the dragons, so could he know about the Dragon King? Maybe he'll help take him down. One part I found weird in the next scene was that Pat couldn't fix his own car when it broke down, even though he's a mechanic. But this was probably just a way to get him to meet Rick, who he started to suspect as Hourman's son until he heard that his last name was Harris and not Tyler. I like seeing them bond over cars, and I hope that Pat can become a father figure to him, since his uncle isn't a good one. The hourglass started glowing since Rick was nearby, and I found it weird how Courtney noticed even though it didn't make any noise or a huge light. She followed Rick home to show him, and he got mad and she seemed crazy since the hourglass wasn't glowing anymore when she showed him. But that's because she didn't know that it needed to be upside down. Meanwhile, Beth showed up at Courtney's house because she still wanted to join the team, and she told Barbara that she was Courtney's friend, which excited Barbara since she was worried about Courtney not having any friends last episode. We also had our one appearance from Mike, who I still can't stand. Like I said before, he's useless. All he does is stand in the kitchen. Barbara and Mike got annoyed by Beth, so she waited in the living room, which is where she saw the dog chewing on the goggles, so she followed him and took them. Now we got to see everything from Dr.MidNite's point of view, and that looked pretty cool. there was an AI of the original Dr.MidNite which was giving Beth facts about everyone, and it even had Twitter, which was pretty funny. An interesting part of this was that the AI revealed that the original Dr.MidNite was around 100 years old, which is weird because that's not what he looked like in the first episode. It seems they're following the comics with the JSA being around during World War II, but that doesn't really make sense here. The opening scene when they died took place only 10 years ago. Anyway, Courtney came home and saw Beth with the glasses and wanted them back. While they were talking about Rick, the AI started giving facts about Rick, including that his real dad was Rex Tyler. So now Courtney wanted to recruit him because he was a legacy hero, just like she thinks she is to her father Starman. So then we got the scene at the Halloween party, which I really liked. I feel like the scene, or really the whole episode, is the most the show has really felt like a teen drama or a show about teenagers, especially with the smaller focus on Pat and the ISA. First of all, I really liked having Yolanda with them, although I didn't like how Yolanda and Courtney were treating Bev. While right now they're considered the losers, Yolanda used to be popular and so was Courtney at her old school, so I guess that's maybe why they see themselves as better than Bev, who has always been seen as a loser. She may be annoying, but she was also so excited to be a hero, and they just kept on being mean to her. Anyway, they tracked Rick down to Cindy's Halloween party, but Yolanda obviously wouldn't go in when she noticed that Henry was there. Although, wouldn't Cindy still recognize Courtney and Yolanda and not want them there? I liked seeing Bev all excited to be at her first party. She was so pure and innocent. But then the scene I loved was Cindy getting ready for the party. This was probably my favorite scene with her so far. It might be a cliche of the mean girl getting ready, but I thought the use of heads will roll fit in great with her. I'm looking forward to seeing her become a villain later on, and we already saw her being pretty controlling to her friend here. Also, I'm guessing the picture in her mirror was Dragon King's human form. This also led to another part that I loved as we finally saw Henry discovering his powers. Back in episode 2, Brainwave tried to see if Henry had inherited his mind-reading powers, but it didn't seem like it. But now we see that he does have mind-reading powers, which is why he was getting annoyed by all the noise like Jean Grey does. And he thought Yolanda was calling him a jerk. I like that interaction between them. They really seem to be trying to make him seem like a good person while Cindy's the bad guy. So I'm guessing they'll make him part of the JSA like in the comics. Once they found Rick, they told him about his dad, and he thought everything was ridiculous, especially their superhero names. But once they gave him the hourglass, we got to see him experiment with his powers. The thing that annoyed me here was that they were talking about their secret identities out loud in a party full of people, and Rick was even using his powers. I'm glad they at least pointed that part out, but that made him mad and he left with the hourglass. After leaving the party, Rick was going to a bar. I thought we might be getting a reference to the Superman scene with the peanuts since he was so mad, but then he saw his uncle who was harassing a bartender. I already hated how that man treated him earlier. Now it turns out he's even worse, so Rick took his anger out by punching the truck and destroying it with his super strength. I thought this was his uncle's car, but I'm not sure. The next scene was really the most development we got for Beth in this episode, which was weird considering she's literally in the title. So we found out that her parents are never really around since she's not a kid anymore. They went back to work and they don't want to spend time with her anymore. And considering she doesn't have friends, she's really lonely, which is obvious since she's talking to an AI. This made me feel bad for her, and especially because of how the other two were treating her. She said accident, and the goggles showed her the car accident where Rick's parents died. Back to Rick, he was now taking out his anger on the tree that his parents had, and Courtney and Yolanda showed up in their suits. They told him about Starman being Courtney's father, how she was just like him, and why they were putting together the team, but he still wanted nothing to do with them and destroyed the tree. But then Beth showed up to tell him that his parents didn't die in an accident, which he obviously didn't believe, but she showed them the proof from the goggles that Solomon Grundy murdered them. This was a really good scene, from the CGI of the goggles vision to the emotion shown from Rick as he saw his parents crash in front of him. It was really powerful. It also showed how much more innocent Beth is by how scared she seemed of it. I liked how Courtney actually seemed to care for her in the scene. Rick now agreed to join the team so they could find the ISA, but unlike Courtney, he doesn't want justice, he wants revenge. I knew he would say that. He seems to have anger issues, and he kind of reminds me of Ralph from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Based on this, I wonder if he could end up switching sides, and then Henry takes his place in the JSA. The final scene finally brought Pat back into the storyline. First there was a bus that was found by some workers, and the principal emerged from it, once again playing the violin. So now it's obvious that she has taken over as the fiddler. Then Barbara told Pat that there was an accident, and I thought she was talking about the bus, but it was actually the truck that Rick destroyed. Pat's co-worker told him that it seemed like Kong did it, and I thought Pat was suspecting that it was Grundy, but then when he went to look for Courtney, he couldn't find her, but he did see a green glowing light, and he finally found out that she has the JSA gear. It took long enough, but Pat's probably going to be mad now. Back to the bus, it turns out that the chocolate coin the gambler gave that guy earlier in the episode was poisoned, and now he's dead. I'm not sure what's going on here. The gambler is the least interesting villain so far, in my opinion, but I liked seeing him with the fiddler, and my favorite part of this scene was that the music that the fiddler was playing played over the whole scene, which made it great. Overall, I really enjoyed this episode. While the third episode, Icicle, might have had a better story and writing, I think this one is my favorite. I just wish there was more of Yolanda, but this episode wasn't focused on her. Now, the one problem I did have was the lack of focus on Beth, because the episode was named after her and Rick, but we didn't see much of her. I also thought Pat was being slow and stupid before, because he still hadn't found out about the ISA or the new JSA. But then I realized he's been doing all this work by himself. Courtney has Yolanda to help her, and the glasses told them about the ISA. Now I appreciate this more because it shows how smart Pat is. I think I would give this episode a 9 out of 10. Also, there's been so much focus on the Green Lantern that I'm pretty sure he's going to be the next one we get a new version of, but it might be until next season. Well, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe for similar content. I do Stargirl reviews each week along with reviews for the 100. Leave your thoughts on the episode in the comments and have a good day. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.